There's a quiet illusion that wraps itself around modern life. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't confront, it comforts, and most people never question it because it feels like peace. But underneath that peace is something else entirely, a refusal to face what is, a refusal to see life as it actually is, flawed, painful, uncertain, and breathtaking, because real life is heavy, and fantasy is light. We often imagine fantasy as dragons and castles, fiction and escape, but the most dangerous fantasies are not the ones we read in novels. They are the ones we live in silence. They look like hope. They sound like confidence. They wear the mask of growth, love, purpose, and positivity. But deep down, they are defense mechanisms, clever, beautiful distractions we build around the parts of ourselves we cannot bear to face. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." That sentence wasn't poetry, it was prophecy, and you might be living it without even knowing. We all construct internal realities, stories we tell ourselves to survive. Some of them protect us, some inspire us, but some stories become prisons. Stories like, "I'm fine, I just need to manifest it. Once I find the right person, everything will fall into place. It's all part of the plan. I know myself. This time will be different." The truth is, most of these stories are written not by clarity, but by fear. We don't want to admit how much we don't know. We don't want to admit how lonely we really feel. We don't want to admit how lost we are. Without the labels, the goals, the relationships, the dreams we were taught to chase. And so we invent a fantasy, a beautifully edited version of reality, something that feels manageable, safe, certain. But fantasy has a cost. It delays growth, it silences pain, it separates us from the truth, and most tragically, it keeps us from becoming who we actually are. This video is not about judging others, it's about recognizing ourselves, because we all live in fantasy at some point. We all lie to ourselves in small, gentle ways. We all crave comfort more than confrontation. We all want to believe that life will deliver us the truth without requiring us to face it. But life doesn't work like that. At some point, something breaks. The fantasy crumbles, the mask slips, and what's left is the real work. That moment, painful as it may be, is sacred, because it's the first step toward something deeper than fantasy, awakening. In the next 5 parts, we will explore 5 types of people who are, often without realizing it, living in psychological fantasy. Not because they're bad, not because they're stupid, but because life hurt them and fantasy was safer than honesty. Each type will reflect a different strategy of avoidance. One hides behind love, another behind control, one behind positivity, another behind wisdom, one behind suffering. You may recognize someone you know, but more importantly, you may recognize yourself. That's not a reason for shame, it's a reason for compassion. Because awakening isn't about blaming, it's about finally seeing. So before we begin, take a breath. This is not a video to be consumed, it's a mirror to be looked into. And sometimes mirrors show things we've avoided for years. But the truth, when looked at fully, doesn't destroy us. It frees us. Let's begin. They always seem like they're waiting for someone, not for a ride, not for a meeting, but for something larger, someone larger, a soulmate, a twin flame, a cosmic match, a person who will arrive and make the scattered pieces of their life finally make sense. To the romantic escapist, love is not just a connection, it is salvation. You'll recognize them by how they talk about love. It's grand, intense, poetic, fated. They speak of emotional explosions, destiny, karmic timing, and how everything happens for a reason. They are deeply sensitive, deeply imaginative, and often deeply wounded, because for them, love is the ultimate fantasy. It's the place where pain becomes beautiful and longing becomes noble. They don't just want connection. They want transcendence. They want to be seen so perfectly, so fully, that all their shame disappears in the eyes of the other. But here's the quiet truth. They're not really searching for a person. They're searching for themselves, reflected in someone else. That's the trap. They've never been shown how to turn inward, so they turn all their longing outward onto an imagined other who will carry the weight they were never taught to hold. This fantasy can last for years, sometimes forever, because even when love appears, it's not enough. Real people disappoint. Real love is flawed. Real intimacy is slow, boring, uncomfortable. So they leave, or they suffer, or they idealize, and in doing so, they stay loyal to the fantasy. But rarely do we talk about the hidden resentment that grows quietly beneath the surface. Because beneath every savior's kindness is often quiet anger. Anger at feeling taken for granted, anger at always having to be the strong one, anger that your needs always come last. You don't express it because anger feels wrong, ungrateful, shameful. Instead, you swallow it down, smiling on the outside, secretly resenting how little others notice your sacrifices. The Savior doesn't complain, not openly, but the resentment leaks out in subtle ways: passive-aggressive remarks, sudden withdrawal, quiet burnout. This is the quiet tragedy of the Savior archetype. In your effort to matter to others, you forget to matter to yourself. You forget your needs. You dismiss your boundaries. You silence your voice. But your needs don't disappear just because you ignore them. They become louder, more urgent. They manifest in fatigue, anxiety, and emotional numbness. And slowly, your life becomes unsustainable. So how do you rewrite the Savior's script? It begins gently, slowly, with awareness. Noticing when you're stepping into a rescuer role without being asked. Recognizing when you say yes, while your entire body whispers no. Acknowledging the hidden anger beneath your perpetual kindness. You learn to pause before jumping in to save someone, to ask yourself, am I helping because I genuinely want to, or because I feel obligated? You learn that saying no isn't cruel, it's clarity. That setting boundaries isn't rejection, it's honesty. And that allowing others to carry their own burdens isn't abandonment, it's respect. Consider how Tony Stark's character evolves in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Initially driven by guilt and responsibility, Stark endlessly sacrifices himself for others. Yet, eventually, he learns that true heroism isn't constant self-sacrifice, but balanced self-awareness, knowing when to step forward and when to step back. Your journey is similar. Your value isn't measured by how much pain you absorb, how much weight you carry, or how many lives you rescue. Your value is intrinsic, unearned, unconditional, always yours. The Savior archetype doesn't disappear overnight. Its roots are deep, and they grew to protect you. But awareness weakens its grip. Compassion for yourself softens its urgency. And eventually, helping others becomes the choice again, not a compulsion. Your kindness feels genuine, not obligatory. Your sacrifices feel balanced, not overwhelming. Because the purpose of rewriting your hidden script isn't to abandon helping others. It's to finally include yourself in the circle of care. It's realizing that sometimes the person who most needs your help is you. You don't need to sacrifice yourself to matter. You already do. Breathe gently, recognize your story, and know it's never too late to rewrite it. You've always prided yourself on being different, independent, unique, never fully fitting in and never fully wanting to. You feel most alive when pushing against expectations, breaking the rules, challenging authority, questioning what everyone else accepts as normal. You might recognize yourself in characters like Tyler Durden from Fight Club, who rejects society's expectations so fiercely that it becomes his entire identity. Or perhaps in Walter White from Breaking Bad, who defies every norm, ultimately losing himself in the rebellion. Initially, this defiance feels exhilarating. You wear your rebellion like a badge of honor, a symbol of authenticity. But slowly, almost invisibly, it begins to define you in ways you never intended. This is the hidden script of the rebel archetype, the role secretly guiding your life. The rebel doesn't seek harmony, they seek disruption. They don't chase approval, they chase independence. But beneath that fierce independence lies something more vulnerable, a quiet fear. If I'm not fighting against something, who am I? Rebellion becomes your default setting. You find yourself unconsciously drawn to opposition, not necessarily because you truly disagree, but because agreement feels like losing yourself. Your identity is constructed not from within, but from whatever you're pushing against. And as thrilling as this feels, it can become a quiet trap. Because rebellion, at its heart, depends on something external, a structure to oppose, authority to resist, rules to break. Without these things, you lose your sense of self. Think about how often rebellion is romanticized in our culture. We love the rebel, the anti-hero, the outsider. From James Dean's iconic defiance in Rebel Without a Cause to Jack Sparrow's whimsical disregard of authority in Pirates of the Caribbean, rebels fascinate us. Why? Because we all secretly desire the courage to break free from constraints, to live life on our own terms, to define ourselves independently. But there's a subtle difference between authentic independence and reactionary defiance. Authentic independence comes from knowing yourself deeply. Reactionary defiance comes from running away from something. And that difference is critical. If you live as the rebel, your relationships often become defined by opposition. You resist commitment because commitment feels like conformity. You oppose routine because routine feels like submission. You reject advice, even good advice, because accepting it feels like surrender. And the irony? You end up as trapped as the person blindly following rules. Only your trap is made of defiance instead of obedience. The rebel archetype often emerges early in life, perhaps in a family environment where conformity felt suffocating or oppressive. Maybe you grew up feeling misunderstood, criticized, or controlled, and rebellion became your only path to feeling free. Or perhaps you witnessed injustice, hypocrisy, or rigidity so unbearable that defiance felt like integrity. Whatever the origin, your rebellion was initially protective. It was survival. But survival strategies can outlive their usefulness. And rebellion that never evolves into genuine independence keeps you stuck, forever fighting, forever running, never truly arriving. Consider the story of Tony Stark from the Marvel Universe again. In his early life, Stark is a textbook rebel, defying authority, ignoring boundaries, reveling in his iconoclastic image. But as his journey unfolds, Stark realizes something critical. True freedom isn't merely breaking the rules, it's knowing which rules to keep and which to question. It's conscious choice, not automatic defiance. The rebel who never evolves beyond opposition eventually finds themselves alone, isolated, exhausted from constantly pushing against life. But the rebel who learns self-awareness transforms rebellion into wisdom, defiance into discernment, opposition into authentic freedom. How do you rewrite the rebel script in your own life? It starts gently, simply, with awareness. Notice when your first instinct is opposition, and pause. Ask yourself, am I reacting because I genuinely disagree or because agreement feels vulnerable? Observe whether your rebellion brings you closer to your true self or further from genuine connection. Slowly, you realize freedom doesn't always mean breaking things down. Sometimes it means building something meaningful on your terms, consciously chosen. You discover that true rebellion isn't about perpetual opposition. It's about creating something new, authentic, uniquely yours. And sometimes that means learning when not to rebel, learning when to say yes, learning when to soften, learning when openness is strength, not weakness. The rebel archetype is not your enemy. It's a powerful protector. It taught you courage, authenticity, individuality. But now its lesson is deeper. That rebellion is only a starting point, not your entire identity. The journey of self-realization begins when you shift from reaction to reflection, from opposition to creation, from running away to consciously walking towards something you deeply value. Because at your core, you're not simply a reaction to your environment. You're the author of your own story. Take a breath. Recognize this script, honor it for protecting you, but no longer let it limit you. You're more than your rebellion. You're more than opposition. You're allowed to step beyond the fight and finally, fully become yourself. You're the one everyone turns to when life feels heavy, the one who quietly listens, silently comforts, and gently supports. Your presence is calming, nurturing, reassuring. You have a gift for knowing exactly what others need, often before they do. You recognize yourself in characters like Samwise Gamgee from The Lord of the Rings, who tirelessly supports Frodo through every step of his harrowing journey, or maybe in Beth Pearson from This Is Us, whose warmth, kindness, and constant availability make her the emotional anchor of her family. And it feels good to be needed, doesn't it? To see the relief on someone's face when you step in, to feel indispensable, significant, valued. But slowly, quietly, something else creeps in. Exhaustion. Because while everyone else's cup fills, yours steadily empties. Drop by drop, gesture by gesture, comforting word by comforting word. This is the hidden script of the caretaker, the archetype secretly ruling your life. The caretaker isn't driven by ego, rebellion, or ambition. They're driven by empathy, by genuine compassion. But beneath that beautiful compassion often lies something unseen, a deep-rooted belief. I am valuable only when I'm useful to others. Maybe it began early, a childhood where you learned that your needs mattered less than those around you. Perhaps you saw a parent struggle, suffer, or withdraw, and you stepped in, too young, too soon, to carry their emotional weight. Or maybe you internalized the message that love must be earned, that you must give, perform, comfort, sacrifice to be worthy. Over time, caring became not just your strength, but your identity, and your own needs faded quietly into the background. The caretaker archetype is so celebrated, so respected, that most people don't realize its hidden cost. Consider Dolores from Disney's Encanto, the quiet, perceptive observer who silently absorbs everyone's emotions, holding countless secrets while her own desires remain hidden. Or Monica Geller from Friends, whose constant caretaking and nurturing ensure she is always essential, but also quietly exhausted, needing validation that rarely comes without sacrifice. Our culture admires caretakers deeply, but rarely sees their hidden struggles. Because caretakers don't complain, they smile, nod, and reassure you that everything's fine, even when it's clearly not. If the caretaker secretly guides your life, you'll recognize these quiet signs, saying, "I'm fine," when you're not, smiling through exhaustion, apologizing when you ask for help, or never asking at all, feeling guilty about taking breaks or prioritizing yourself, silently resenting others for not seeing how much you give. You likely don't feel comfortable receiving. In fact, receiving feels strangely vulnerable because it confronts you with a deeper question. Am I allowed to have needs too? The tragic irony of caretaking is that while you readily offer kindness to others, you rarely extend the same kindness to yourself. You give compassion without limits, yet you judge yourself harshly if you're anything less than perfectly generous. You grant endless patience to friends, yet feel shame when you need patience in return. You encourage others to rest, recharge, and nurture themselves, but rarely give yourself the same permission. And so, the silent exhaustion grows. How do you rewrite the caretaker's script? It begins with gentle recognition. You acknowledge your need to be needed. You notice when helping others comes at your own expense. You observe your quiet resentment, the signal that boundaries are missing. You start by practicing something small yet profound, saying no. Not every time, not all at once, but enough to feel uncomfortable, enough to remember that your worth doesn't depend on constant giving. You practice receiving, allowing others to support you, asking for help, letting yourself rest without guilt. Look at the journey of Marge Simpson from The Simpsons, forever holding her family together, absorbing their chaos. While Marge's tireless caretaking is admired, it also quietly drains her joy, individuality, and self-expression. Only when Marge allows herself moments of honesty, expressing exhaustion or frustration, does she reclaim parts of herself, however briefly. Your own journey might mirror this. The caretaker's path isn't about rejecting your kindness. It's about extending that kindness inward toward yourself. Because real caretaking must include you. You realize true compassion isn't endless giving. It's balanced giving. It's recognizing your own limits, your own humanity, your own need for rest, joy, and care. You start to see that boundaries don't weaken your love. They protect it. They ensure you're able to give sustainably, authentically, joyfully. And slowly, the caretaker within you becomes healthier. Not a role performed out of obligation, but a choice made from genuine capacity. You're still nurturing, still kind, still generous, but now those qualities include yourself. You say, "I need help," without shame. You rest without apology. You love without resentment. Because ultimately, caretaking isn't just about helping others, it's about connection. And genuine connection includes mutual care, It includes you receiving as deeply as you give. Take a breath. Honor this hidden archetype. It served you beautifully. It taught you empathy, kindness, love. But now, it gently asks you to expand your compassion inward. Because you deserve the care you give. You deserve the love you offer. You deserve to rest without guilt. And in that gentle shift, you become a caretaker in the fullest sense, nurturing not just others, but your own soul. You've always known how to make people smile, how to charm, how to entertain, how to captivate a room. You're comfortable in the spotlight, or at least that's how it seems. Your friends might describe you as charismatic, confident, magnetic. You're often the person who effortlessly tells the funniest stories at parties, the coworker who delivers engaging presentations, the friend who shines brightest on social media. Maybe you identify with characters like Tony Stark and Iron Man, whose charismatic exterior masks deep vulnerability and self-doubt. Or perhaps you resonate with Don Draper from Mad Men, whose polished image hides a fractured inner world. From the outside, the performer's life looks enviable, admired, successful, sought after. But beneath the surface lies a subtle anxiety, an ongoing tension. What if the applause stops? What if they finally see beneath the performance and don't like what they find? This is the hidden script of the performer, the archetype quietly shaping your life. The performer's value is anchored not in who they are, but in how they're perceived. Early on, perhaps, you learned that acceptance hinged on performance. Good grades, entertaining others, achievements, success. Being exceptional. Love felt conditional, something you earned through constant excellence, charm, or wit. You discovered approval arrived when you impressed others, but quickly disappeared if you ever showed weakness, boredom, or struggle. And so, performance became your armor, your protection, your identity. Our culture worships performers. We idolize celebrities, influencers, star athletes, those whose public personas sparkle effortlessly, but we rarely see behind the curtain the anxiety, the loneliness, the quiet emptiness performers feel when the applause fades. Consider Robin Williams, brilliant, beloved, endlessly entertaining. His comedic genius delighted millions. Yet behind the laughter, he wrestled with profound sadness, isolation, and inner turmoil. The public saw only his charisma, not the deeper pain hidden beneath his performance. Or consider Marilyn Monroe, whose captivating persona masked deep insecurities, fear, and loneliness, hidden behind one of history's most glamorous images. These stories move us deeply because they reveal a universal truth. A life built entirely on external validation eventually becomes hollow. If you carry the performer's archetype, you'll recognize these subtle patterns. Constantly checking reactions, scanning faces, social media likes, feedback. Feeling anxious or empty when you're not the center of attention. Quietly believing you must remain impressive to be lovable or worthy. Carefully editing your true self to match what others expect or admire. This endless performance leaves little room for authenticity because being authentic risks rejection, and rejection feels terrifying. But the quiet tragedy of the performer is this: in your quest to be admired, you become distant from yourself. Your true needs, desires, fears, and vulnerabilities fade behind the polished persona you carefully maintain. You live in constant tension, craving to be truly seen yet fearing what happens if you drop the mask. The applause feels good, but it never lasts. It never fully reaches your heart, because deep down, you doubt if anyone could truly love the unpolished, unedited, imperfect version of you. How do you rewrite the performer's script? It starts gently, compassionately, with small moments of authenticity, allowing yourself to be quiet, even if you're known as the entertainer, sharing a vulnerability instead of hiding it behind humor. Recognizing when your charm becomes a shield and daring to lower it just a little. You begin noticing when you're performing and when you're truly present. You learn to sit in the discomfort of not being constantly admired, and you discover something remarkable. You survive. You realize admiration is fleeting, conditional, external. True acceptance comes not from applause, but from genuine, honest connections. Connections built on vulnerability, imperfection, authenticity. The performer's journey isn't about abandoning charisma, humor, or confidence. These gifts remain yours, but you start using them consciously rather than compulsively. You begin sharing yourself, not only your strengths, but your quieter parts too. You discover that true relationships form in moments of honesty, moments when you risk showing your uncertainty, sadness, confusion, or imperfection. You find friends who appreciate not just your dazzling exterior, but your quieter interior, the part that doesn't always shine, the part that doesn't always have answers, the part that simply wants to be held, heard, and understood. Imagine yourself stepping off stage, not permanently, but just for a moment. Imagine sitting quietly with someone who sees your full humanity, someone who values your presence more than your performance. This is the gentle shift from performance to presence, from impressing others to truly connecting with them. The performer inside you learns that love doesn't vanish when you stop dazzling. It deepens. Your humor remains, but it's balanced with depth. Your charisma stays, but it's anchored in honesty. Your confidence grows, not from external applause, but from quiet self-acceptance. Take a gentle breath. Honor this hidden script. Thank it for the protection it offered, the confidence it taught. But now, gently, allow yourself to be more than a performance. Allow yourself to be human, imperfect, real. Because the deepest relationships, the truest love, is never found in applause, but in quiet moments of shared vulnerability. And those moments, far more than any spotlight, make life truly meaningful. You've always been drawn to new horizons. Your heart quickens at the thought of unexplored paths, distant places, unknown experiences. You're the friend who dreams of travel, who moves cities often, who finds excitement in fresh beginnings. Routine and stability can feel suffocating, limiting, restrictive. Maybe you identify with characters like Elizabeth Gilbert from Eat, Pray, Love, whose restless search for meaning takes her across continents and cultures, or Frodo Baggins from The Lord of the Rings, whose journey profoundly changes him, leaving him never quite able to fully return home. At first glance, the wanderer's life seems adventurous, exciting, inspiring, always evolving, forever expanding. But hidden beneath the thrill of new experiences lies something quieter, something more vulnerable, a deep, persistent sense of rootlessness, an underlying feeling of never truly belonging anywhere, of always seeking but never fully finding home. This is the hidden script of the wanderer, the archetype secretly guiding your life. Wanderers often appear enviably free, unattached, spontaneous, flexible, but behind that freedom is frequently a subtle anxiety. What am I truly searching for? And why can't I ever seem to find it? Perhaps your wandering began early, with a childhood spent feeling misunderstood, unseen, or trapped. In family, community, or culture, maybe you learned early on that the only way to survive was to leave, to emotionally or physically distance yourself from whatever felt confining or painful. And so, wandering became your survival strategy, your escape hatch, your refuge. It was how you avoided discomfort, stagnation, emotional wounds, but over time, your journey itself began to define you. You became the perpetual seeker, always on the move, always searching, always waiting for life to begin somewhere else. Our culture romanticizes wanderers deeply, from Jack Kerouac's restless travels in On the Road, to Bilbo Baggins' adventure-driven life in The Hobbit, or even Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, who sets out on her solitary quest to discover her identity. We love wanderers because they represent something fundamental: the courage to explore, the freedom to choose, the bravery to follow our own path. But the shadow side of perpetual wandering often remains unseen. It can quietly become another form of escape from intimacy, responsibility, emotional depth, genuine vulnerability. The wanderer archetype often mistakes external exploration for internal discovery, believing the next job, city, relationship, or adventure will finally fill the internal void. Yet each new horizon eventually feels disappointingly familiar, because the core need remains unaddressed. If you carry the wanderer's archetype, you might recognize these subtle signs: feeling trapped whenever life stabilizes, quickly losing interest once the thrill of novelty fades, constantly imagining life would be better somewhere else, quietly believing the next adventure, relationship, or opportunity will finally bring fulfillment. You might find commitment challenging, not because you fear it consciously, but because deep down, you fear the loss of freedom, the loss of possibility, and the deeper fear beneath that: if I stop wandering, who will I become? The wanderer's journey feels exhilarating until it starts to feel exhausting, because endless exploration without integration, constant seeking without reflection, eventually leaves you empty, dissatisfied, disconnected. You risk becoming a tourist in your own life, observing experiences rather than truly living them. The world you once dreamed of exploring begins to feel lonely, and your constant movement keeps you isolated, disconnected from deeper relationships, never truly allowing yourself to settle, be known, or be held. How do you rewrite the wanderer's script? It begins gently, compassionately, with stillness, not forced, but chosen. You practice staying when you feel the impulse to leave. You allow yourself to sit with boredom, discomfort, restlessness, not as signs that something is wrong, but as invitations to look inward. You ask deeper questions. What am I truly seeking? Is it adventure or connection? Is it freedom or meaning? Am I running toward something or just away? You begin realizing that true fulfillment isn't found in endless novelty, but in genuine presence, deepening into moments rather than simply gathering more of them. Consider the journey of Forrest Gump, forever running, endlessly seeking, yet ultimately discovering meaning and contentment, not through constant movement, but in stillness, reflection, and acceptance of what already is. or Cheryl Strayed and Wild, whose physical journey along the Pacific Crest Trail leads not to endless wandering, but to profound internal clarity and self-understanding. Your journey mirrors this. The wanderer's archetype isn't about abandoning adventure, it's about deepening your adventure, shifting from constant movement to intentional exploration. You learn the difference between running away and consciously walking toward something meaningful, authentic, chosen. You recognize that true freedom isn't simply the absence of boundaries, but the presence of deliberate choices. The wanderer's script was your protector. It taught you bravery, independence, adaptability, but now it invites you into deeper bravery. Staying when leaving feels easier. Deepening connections instead of constantly moving on. Exploring internally rather than always externally. Your journeys become richer, more meaningful, more fulfilling, because they're no longer driven by unconscious escape, but by conscious intention. You still wander, but with a clear direction. You still seek, but you also allow yourself to find. You finally understand that home isn't somewhere you discover externally. It's something you cultivate within yourself. Take a gentle breath. Honor this archetype. Thank it for the protection, excitement, courage it gave you, but now let it guide you deeper, from endless seeking to intentional discovery. Because the greatest adventures are not always in distant places, but often in the quiet, courageous act of truly coming home to yourself. You have now met 5 hidden archetypes, 5 quiet scripts secretly guiding your life. The Savior, whose value comes from constant self-sacrifice. The Rebel, whose identity forms through constant opposition. The Caretaker, whose worth depends on endless giving. The Performer, who needs applause to feel truly alive. The Wanderer, who endlessly seeks yet never quite feels at home. Each of these archetypes reveals something profound about your internal world, not flaws or mistakes, but adaptations, strategies your psyche adopted early in life. They were meant to protect you, to help you survive. They offered identity, purpose, meaning. But now they quietly restrict you. They limit your authenticity, your freedom, your full human potential. Because living fully isn't about endlessly repeating old scripts. It's about consciously writing new ones. The philosopher Joseph Campbell once said, "We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us." Your hidden archetypes were your old life plan. They were roles you adopted because at some point they made sense. They were familiar, safe, known, but familiarity can quietly become confinement. And the truth you're starting to see clearly is this. You are more than any single archetype, any single role, any single script. You are not just the Savior, endlessly sacrificing. You are not just the rebel, forever opposing. You are not just the caretaker, always giving. You are not just the performer, constantly impressing. You are not just the wanderer, endlessly seeking. You are all these things and none of them. You're the observer behind them, the consciousness that can choose something different. You're the author of your own story. Consider characters whose journeys resonate deeply because they move beyond their archetypes. Tony Stark moves beyond the rebel's defiance and performer's applause, discovering deeper purpose, genuine love, and meaningful sacrifice, not out of obligation, but from authentic choice. Katniss Everdeen learns her true value isn't just as the savior or performer, but as a complete person, someone who can choose life beyond sacrifice and expectations. Elizabeth Gilbert, whose restless wandering eventually leads her home, not simply to a place, but to her true self, understanding that endless exploration isn't the destination, but a bridge to deeper meaning. Your journey is the same. Your archetypes aren't fixed identities, they're invitations. They're doorways into deeper self-awareness, signals from your unconscious that something longs to be integrated, understood, healed. How do you begin rewriting your hidden scripts? First, gently recognize them. Notice when you slip into old roles, old patterns, not with shame or self-judgment, but with quiet curiosity. Ask yourself gently, which archetype am I embodying now? What hidden fear or need lies beneath it? What deeper desire is this archetype trying to fulfill? Next, consciously choose something new. Not a dramatic overhaul, but small shifts. If you're the savior, practice saying no without guilt. If you're the rebel, pause before reacting automatically. Allow yourself genuine reflection. If you're the caretaker, set small boundaries to include your needs. If you're the performer, practice authenticity. Share a quiet, vulnerable truth. If you're the wanderer, practice stillness. Stay present instead of immediately moving on. Each small choice begins to rewrite your script, transforming unconscious roles into conscious decisions. You don't abandon these archetypes. You integrate them. You balance them. You become flexible, adaptive, whole. You realize true freedom isn't abandoning roles. It's choosing them consciously, deliberately, intentionally. You're no longer blindly driven by hidden scripts. Instead, you consciously direct your own narrative with curiosity, compassion, self-awareness. You become the storyteller, not just the actor. You live from purpose, not just pattern. Imagine your life as a movie, and until now you've played predetermined roles without question. But now you pause, step back, and ask, who am I without these scripts? Who am I when I allow myself choice, vulnerability, authenticity? This question is the heart of self-discovery, self-realization, self-actualization. It moves your life from unconscious repetition to conscious creation. It's the difference between surviving your life and genuinely living it. Carl Jung wisely said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Your archetypes are part of your past, but your future, your true self, is defined not by what you unconsciously inherited, but by what you consciously choose now. You still carry the Savior's kindness, the rebel's courage, the caretaker's compassion, the performer's charisma, the wanderer's curiosity. But now, these qualities no longer limit you. They empower you because you hold them consciously, intentionally, with balance, wisdom, depth. Your hidden scripts no longer secretly rule you. Instead, they quietly inform you, guide you, teach you. And in rewriting these scripts, you don't lose yourself. You finally discover yourself. You discover your story is richer, deeper, truer than you imagined. You discover freedom and self-awareness, love and authenticity, purpose and presence. So breathe deeply. Honor each archetype, each script, each role. Thank them for protecting you, and now gently release them from their unconscious control. Your story isn't finished. It's only beginning. And this time, you're the one writing it. You hold the pen. You choose the words. You create the meaning. And finally, fully, beautifully, you step into the life waiting for you. Welcome home.